The year was 911. For more than a century, the Vikings had terrorized Europe. They burned villages, destroyed monasteries, looted cities, and disappeared before kings could stop them. Every kingdom feared the sight of dragon-headed longships appearing on the horizon. But then, something happened that nobody expected. Instead of fighting the most feared Viking leader, a king offered him land, not as a prisoner, not as a servant, but as a ruler. That Viking's name was Rollo. The decision made that year would create a new kingdom, a new dynasty, and eventually change the future of England, France, and all of Europe. This is the incredible story of the Viking who changed Europe forever. Chapter 1. A man shrouded in mystery. Unlike Ragnar, unlike Harald Hardrada, unlike Canute, nobody knows exactly where Rollo was born. Some historians believe he came from Norway. Others argue he was Danish. The truth has been lost to history. Even medieval writers disagreed, but they all described one thing the same way. Rollo was enormous, a giant among men. Legend says he was so tall and heavy that no horse could comfortably carry him. Whether that story is true or not, one thing is certain: his reputation terrified everyone who heard his name. According to Norse traditions, Rollo belonged to a noble family, but politics, power, and rivalry soon turned his homeland against him. Many accounts claim he was forced into exile, without land, without a kingdom, without a future. For most men, exile meant failure. For Rollo, it became the beginning of something far greater. He gathered loyal warriors, built powerful longships, and sailed south, not searching for adventure, but searching for opportunity. Chapter 2. The Terror of the Seine. By the late 9th century, the Frankish kingdom was already exhausted. Every year, new Viking fleets appeared. They attacked towns, destroyed churches, captured wealthy monasteries, then disappeared before large armies could arrive. The river Seine became their highway, and no Viking commander understood that river better than Rollo. His warriors could sail hundreds of kilometers inland, striking places no one believed were vulnerable. Villages abandoned their homes. Church bells rang whenever strange ships appeared. Families fled into forests, carrying only what they could hold. The Vikings were becoming richer after every raid. But Rollo was beginning to think differently. Many Viking leaders cared only about gold, silver, jewels, slaves. Rollo wanted something money could never buy: land, a permanent home, a kingdom of his own. That dream slowly changed the way he fought. Instead of simply attacking, he observed, he learned, he studied castles, roads, trade routes, river crossings. He wasn't preparing for another raid. He was preparing for a future, one that no Viking had ever achieved. Chapter 3. The King Who Had No Answer. King Charles the Simple ruled West Francia. On paper, he commanded one of Europe's strongest kingdoms. But reality looked very different. Every campaign against the Vikings cost enormous amounts of money. Even when royal armies won battles, the Vikings escaped. Months later, they returned. The kingdom was trapped. Fight, lose resources, rebuild, fight again. It became an endless cycle. The nobles grew frustrated. Merchants stopped investing. Farmers abandoned fertile land near the rivers. Trade collapsed. The people wanted peace, but peace seemed impossible. Meanwhile, Rollo's influence continued growing. More Viking warriors joined him. His fleet became larger. His reputation became greater. Eventually, King Charles realized something terrifying. He could spend another 10 years fighting Rollo, or he could try something no king had ever seriously attempted before: negotiate. Not because Rollo was stronger, but because endless war had become even more dangerous. In the year 911, both men finally agreed to meet. Neither side fully trusted the other. Both knew history was about to change. Chapter 4. The Deal That Shocked Europe. The meeting between King Charles and Rollo was unlike anything Europe had seen before. For generations, kings had fought Vikings with swords. Now, a king was offering land to one of them. The agreement became known as the Treaty of Saint-Clair-sur-Epte. Its terms were extraordinary. Rollo would receive a vast stretch of land along the lower Seine River. In return, he would protect the kingdom from future Viking raids. The man who had once attacked these shores would now defend them. But there was one more condition. Rollo had to accept Christianity. For a man raised in the traditions of Odin and Thor, this was more than a political decision. It meant stepping into an entirely new world. He was baptized and took the Christian name Robert. According to legend, during the ceremony, Rollo refused to kneel before the king. Instead, one of his warriors lifted the king's foot so forcefully to kiss it that Charles nearly fell backwards. Whether the story is true or not, it perfectly captures Rollo's character. Even in peace, he refused to appear weak. Chapter 5. The Birth of Normandy. The land given to Rollo soon became known as Normandy, the land of the Northmen. At first, many believed the experiment would fail. How could ruthless Viking raiders become rulers? But Rollo surprised everyone. Instead of ruling through fear alone, he built laws, strengthened defenses, protected trade routes, encouraged farming, and welcomed both Norse settlers and the local Frankish population. Slowly, the two cultures began to merge. The Vikings learned the French language, adopted local customs, built churches, married into noble families. Within a generation, the descendants of feared raiders had become respected nobles. Normandy grew wealthier, stronger, and more organized with each passing year. The kingdom that had once feared Viking attacks now relied on Viking descendants for protection. Chapter 6. The legacy that conquered England. Rollo would never conquer England himself, but his greatest victory would come long after his death. His descendants transformed Normandy into one of the most powerful duchies in Europe. Then, almost 150 years later, one man changed history forever. William, Duke of Normandy, a direct descendant of Rollo. In 1066, William crossed the English Channel, defeated King Harold at the Battle of Hastings, and became William the Conqueror, the first Norman King of England. That single victory reshaped English law, language, government, architecture, and even the English words we speak today. If King Charles had never made peace with Rollo, history might have unfolded in a completely different way. One decision, one treaty, changed the fate of nations. Rollo arrived as an exile. He became a conqueror, then a ruler. His story reminds us that sometimes the greatest victories are not won on the battlefield, but through the choices that shape the future. The Viking who once terrified Europe ended up laying the foundation for one of its most influential dynasties, and his legacy still echoes across Europe nearly 1,000 years later. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Beyond Empires for more cinematic documentaries on forgotten empires, legendary warriors, and history's greatest turning points, because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones history almost forgot. Thanks for watching.